This podcast was originally live-streamed on the Non Sequitur Show on YouTube. New episodes air weekdays, Monday through Friday, at 8 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/nonsequiturshow. Make sure you never miss a live stream by visiting www.nonsexshow.com/schedule. For the latest news, polls and updates throughout the day, follow us on Twitter @nonsexshow or facebook.com/nonsexshow. That's NONSEQ show. If you'd like to get exclusive content, bi-weekly private hangouts with Kyle and Steve, backstage access to chat with guests after shows hosted on your channel and much more, become a Patreon saint of Non Sequitur. It ensures we continue to improve our show and brings you into the process at the same time. Visit patreon.com/nonsequitur today while the limited spots are still available.
The following podcast is intended for those who believe bold ideas are righteous, unique perspectives are gospel, and strong opinions are sacred. This is Non Sequitur. Never follow. And now, here are your hosts, Kyle Curtis and Steve McRae.
Hello, beautiful people. How's everybody doing? We're back, Steve. We're back together.
I know.
For the
oh my goodness,
the first time
so
since the tragedy happened. What
Out of
should we
all
call that? Copyright Gate.
Copyright Gate. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to go for. Boy, what an adventure that was, though. I mean, I was almost let down the fact that I thought we were going to have to fight really hard to get all this shit taken care of. But you know what? Fact UK did the right thing. They did exactly what they needed to do to rectify the situation. We accepted their apology. YouTube got their shit together, and so it's over. Yeah, it all came together. Well, we'll say hello to Mr. Chris Shelton. How are you, sir? Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, good day. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Chris Shelton has I think a fascinating story in an equally fascinating religion. Would you call them a religion, or would you call them more of a cult, Chris? No.
Well, those two things are not necessarily mutually exclusive, but I would not refer to Scientology as a cult. I would refer to it as a money-making scam that uses religious cloaking to hide its true nature.
Well said. You know what, though? Like you said, they're not mutually exclusive. I think that definition, too, can be applied to quite a few religions. So,
absolutely. Yeah, people tend to think that destructive cults, which is what we call Scientology, have to be religious. They always think of cults in terms of religion, but cults don't have to be religious. So, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. I mean, you got the Westboro Baptists, you got radical Islamists, you've got Jehovah's Witnesses, that are religious in nature. But then you have something like NXIVM. That is being prosecuted right now by the FBI, right? The whole Allison Mack, NXIVM, Keith Renier thing. That was definitely a destructive cult. They were branding women, but it wasn't religious in nature. That was a business consulting thing, is how they modeled that. And you have martial arts. You have martial arts dojos. You have acting classes. There was one lady out in Los Angeles who's a fortune teller, and she was starting to create this kind of abusive relationship situation with her clientele. And they were becoming so dependent on her that they were giving her all of their money, all of their time. They basically became like slaves to her, which sounds insane because it is insane. But the original relationship was she was a fortune teller. So that is
insane.
So you can get all kinds of shapes and sizes.
I don't consider Scientology religion. I know Germany doesn't, and a few other countries, a lot of countries are now. And so I don't feel bad by saying it's not a religion. Now, granted, there have protections of religion, but that doesn't mean that I have to agree with that. I think they're not a religion. As you said, they're a money-making scheme.
That's
Very
right.
good point.
And they use religious cloaking. This was not an accident. They didn't just organically fall into this. This was a strategic move on the part of L. Ron Hubbard to get those kind of First Amendment legal protections. That's how it happened. He originally started the whole thing as a science, not as Scientology. It was Dianetics. And that bombed bad. So then he went with the religious angle. That's what he called it, the religious angle. So
well, he didn't go wrong in that second attempt, that's for sure. And we're going to dive deeper into that because I know Steve and I have so many questions. We had a gentleman by the name of Derek on about 2 months ago, and he was somebody that was actually in the religion as I guess a believer or a follower, and he actually got up to what level of Sea Org did he say he was at, Steve?
Was 7? OTC 7 or something?
But
is that what it was?
He was deep into it, and his story was just heartbreaking. So, and I'm sure that you being like actually employed by Scientology, you have a completely different angle and probably a more you know the sinister aspects of it, I'm sure. And so that's what I kind of want to dive into once we get rid of a few of the announcements really quickly. Just an add-on to the schedule for this week, guys. We will be doing actually 2 things on Sunday. We're overloading, doing a doubleheader on Sunday. Steve's desk. Can't talk tonight, Steve. I'm so excited to be back. Steve's DEF CON Science channel is. We're actually going to stream that to his channel and to this channel because I don't know if you noticed, but Steve and I got into a little one of our tiffs where mom and dad have to fight sometimes in front of the kids. And it was over the Big Bang. So we're actually having some scientists come on and talk about that in more detail. And of course, we'll let you guys vote to show everybody that I'm right. And Steve, do you want to let everybody know who's coming?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm making a presentation on this. I'm actually distilling quite a bit of quantum mechanics and dealing with things like wave functions and explaining Big Bang cosmology in about 25 slides. So that's a challenge. But we got Dr. Kroon coming on, who's already reviewed it. He really likes it. And we have somebody named Astra Athens coming on. She is she was an intern from the Hayden Planetarium and an international model. So another beauty in brains. Check her out. But yes, they're going to be on. It's going to be noon Pacific this Sunday, 3 Eastern.
Right. 3 Eastern. And then at 8 Eastern, we have Katie Paulson from Pathos. She is going to be on we're going to do a special expose in another form of, I guess, scamming and snake oil. I'm more call it snake oil salesman, where we're going to be talking about the miracle mineral water solution and a little follow-up on our Jilly Juice expose, which if you guys don't know, after we did the show on Jilly Juice, she had a bit of a breakdown, I guess, and she uploaded about a dozen videos total on Facebook about the show and how we were wrong and all this other kind of stuff. But in her comments, she made some pretty distasteful comments about the LGBTQ community, and somebody reported that and got her banned for 30 days on Facebook. So that wasn't us. We don't care, you know that.
That wasn't us, but
yeah, we will be diving into
30
that.
days she can't peddle her
on Sunday at 8:00. Yeah. So okay, that's it. Let's dive into some L. Ron Hubbard world. Okay, I have a question, Chris. Let's start this off by answering this. You seem, and from what I've seen about you, you seem like you have your head on your shoulders. You're a rationally thinking person. How did you get caught up in something like this for 25 years?
I was kind of basically born into it. My parents got involved when I was about 4. So you know, all my living memories are basically with Scientology in them, because I was raised with it. So I'm what's called a second gen, which is an umbrella term for anybody who's not first generation. You know, if you walk in off the street, or, you know, you get in through a friend or something, or somehow you get yourself involved, then that's a first generation member. But once you have kids and they're raised with it, whether it's, you know, your kids or the grandkids or the 4th generation or whatever, we just call them second gen. And that's what I am. So, having been raised with it, it's kind of like being raised with any other religious belief. You just sort of accept it. It's your worldview. You don't question it. You don't think to, question your parents or all of their friends, because I was surrounded growing up by Scientologists.
Sure. So when you say that you worked for Scientology, can you give us an overview of what you did and how you got to that point? Like, what made you decide that you wanted
Absolutely.
to be a part of the organization in that capacity?
Yeah, I was. I grew up around Scientology, so I knew a lot of the principles and foundational kind of ideas of it. But it was when I was in high school that I actually started doing it. Actually started going to the local church of Scientology, which at that time in that place was in California in Santa Barbara. And we lived up in a little place called Santa Maria up in the mountains up there. And so my dad said, hey, why don't you go check it out for yourself? So I did. And I did the personality test. And having already been built up on all the terminology and the ideas and basic concepts of it, it wasn't like it was a real hard sell to get me to sign up and get on board. In fact, it was extremely easy. They appealed to my shyness and my kind of nerdiness and the fact that I wasn't connecting up with girls or anything very well in high school. So they said, well, you do these classes and we're going to take care of all that for you. So I was like, great, sign me up. So then I started doing classes and the counseling services. And then when I was 17, I graduated high school and I was going to college at community college, and I was on my way to, my plan was to be a writer and an English teacher. And then they said, well, we got a better idea for you. Instead of teaching English, why don't you save the world? And I said, okay, sure, and they said, no, really, the Scientology, and this is where it's at. This is the only thing that really matters. There isn't anything else in the world that's actually going to save anything or anybody. Everything in the world that you are surrounded by is kind of, not an illusion and not fake, just destructive. It's just not helpful to people. And, left to their own devices, people start wars and they get into criminality and they take drugs and they do bad things and they beat up on each other. And, they divorce rate 50%, blah, 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 all the statistics of how horrible and awful the world is. When I'm 17 years old, I haven't been out in the real world. I don't really know what it's like. I don't know any nuances. I don't know about the good and bad of the world. I just know that Scientology is supposed to be the thing that's supposed to change the world, and my parents bought into it, so maybe I should too. And I had read enough of L. Ron Hubbard's works at this point and listened to enough of his lectures at this point that I thought he knew what he was talking about. He certainly says he knows what he's talking about. And so I bought into this idea that Scientology's methods and techniques, what they call their technology, that's the word they use for it, was the only thing that was actually going to save people and salvage them and bring some calm and some order to the world. The stated goals of Scientology, the aims of Scientology, are a world without insanity, war, or criminality. And they believe that they have the methods that are necessary in order to pull that off. And when I was 17 years old, I thought they did too. So I gave up the college thing, and which wasn't too hard because I was in community college, so it was kind of like high school the sequel. Like, I wasn't too into it, and they said, "Hey, come do this." So I did. I did, and that was how it got started. And when you sign up to start as a staff, when you sign up as a staff member at what I call a city level church, it's what they call a class 5 organization. There's all kinds of terminology in Scientology. I'll try not to use too much of it tonight, but there's a lot of terminology.
No, be our guest. Use the terminology because we're
okay.
Like, we have no idea what that means. But
I don't want to confuse the hell out of people, but they call them orgs.
Oh,
they call them organizations.
Don't worry about our live chat. They can.
So I started working at Santa Barbara, and when you do that, that's not the billion-year thing. What you do is you sign on for a term of 2.5 or 5 years, depending on what you want to do.